Welcome everyone. Today we're going to go over one of Olivier Bellinger's races in the TCR series that we're participating in. And we see here we're at Road Atlanta. Olivier is in that pink Civic starting in P9 as we had an inverted grid for race number 2, which is this one, and Olivier finished P2 in race 1. And here we have a replay, and Olivier is actually joining us. Olivier, why don't you take us through this start?
Hey, thanks for that, Quentin. So, yeah, standing start here in the TCR, obviously pretty important to get away without too much wheel spin. Was able to get away pretty cleanly, and just trying to get through up the hill to turn 3. Definitely bottlenecks here a little bit. Just have to stay cautious of everyone around you, but we made it through cleanly.
All right, thanks for that insight, Olivier. So still on lap 1 here, coming through turn 5 now over the big curves, and we see Olivier getting pretty aggressive already in terms of this Elantra in front of him. And now coming through turn 6 and 7, where the pack tends to tighten up quite a bit because it is one of the slowest corners on the track. And we're now onto the back straight, and we can see at the start of the race with everybody so close, we got at least 2 wide and even 3 cars wide at some points here, and big battles even for the lead at this point. Olivier is still sitting back in about 8th place at this point, and we're now coming into 10A towards the end of lap 1, and we see a lot of hectic things going on here. A lot of drivers fighting for track space. One of them goes off there. Coming down the hill to the start finish, Olivier gets a little bump there, and now another little bump, and that actually sends him over the grass while he's going past the start finish line onto lap 2. Loses him a few spots, but he gets back on track safely. Going up turn 1 now, bumping again with another driver as the entire pack bunches up in front of him, and he just tries to slice his way through. He does a pretty good job there, and we're going to see a replay now of that entire sequence. And Olivier, why don't you talk us through this one?
Yeah, so I could already see these guys were getting a little crazy going 2, 3 wide into 10A, 10B. Car going off the track there. I saw a gap on the inside. They got a bit stacked up. I went for it. It was a little tight, had a bit of contact, and just the angle I went into the corner, I already knew I was going to be going wide, so just try to collect it as best as I could and, uh, you know, try not to take too much damage from it. But was able to get back on the track, lost a few spots, and then again, I see these guys bumping and hitting and going sideways all over the place. So I actually tucked back here for a second, waited for them, waited for the incident to unfold. That was obviously going to happen at some point, and then took advantage of it, got a few spots there.
All right, thanks for that, Olivier. So we're following him down now, coming up to turn 5 for the second time. And we see that there's a small gap to the car in front, and he crossed the line to start lap 2 in 7th position, but obviously overall still lost some places. I think he's sitting back in 8th place at this point in the race, which still isn't too bad. It is a 20-minute race, which ended up being 14 laps. So there's still plenty of time to make up ground on these drivers in front, and most of the pack is still bunched up in front of him, so that should give him some good opportunities coming up here. As we go back into turn 10A and then B for the second time, and we see Olivier getting pretty aggressive and some liftoff oversteer on corner entry into 10A there. And Road Atlanta is definitely one of the more exciting tracks, especially in TCR, but these cars do tend to be pretty fun anywhere you take them. And because of the way they drive and their performance usually leads to pretty close battles as somebody else goes wide in turn 1. There's a free position for Olivier, so 8th, and that should be at least 7th place at this point. And we're going down the hill through the S's for the 3rd time now. And Olivier starts to just close up on this pack in front of him, who are all nose to tail at this point, really, out of turn 5. and 2 cars in front of Olivier going side by side, battling it out into turn 6. And Olivier decides to just be a little cautious here, and through turn 7 onto the back straight, one of the most important corners on the track. As I mentioned before, it's one of the slowest corners, and it also leads you onto the back straight, so exit out of turn 7 is crucial to make sure you have a good run down the back straight and you can really utilize the draft, which Olivier is doing brilliantly at this point, getting a great draft from this Audi in front of him, and we'll see if he can attempt some kind of move. He pulls out, thinks about it, but does end up pulling back in, but then is able to actually get underneath him coming out of 10B, going up and then back down the hill to end lap 3 onto lap 4, and we'll see a replay of that move here. And Olivier, why don't you talk us through this one?
Yeah, so I had a nice draft going down the back straight. Didn't quite want to make the lunge on him, but I did show a nose going into 10A, and it actually kind of worked. Made him miss the apex by a few feet, and then just set him up for a textbook over-under. Nice, easy, clean pass.
All right, thanks for that insight again, Olivier. So we're following on board here, and actually on the TV cameras again at this point, the beginning of lap 4, up the hill, up to turn 3, which is another tricky corner on the track. And you really have to watch out around Road Atlanta with track limits as well. A lot of people struggling to stay within track limits a lot, and that's one of the things that some people have been complaining about with iRacing's track limits at Road Atlanta. But we'll probably have time to cover that a little bit later. Right now, we're going through turn 6, and Olivier is still close up behind a Hyundai Elantra at this point, through turn 7 and onto the back straight. And you'll notice there's actually 3 cars in the TCR class. Now, I was also driving in this race alongside Olivier a bit further back in the pack, and we were both in the Honda Civic Type R TCR cars. Of course, we could have also chosen the Hyundai Elantras or the Audi RS3s. So, I would actually like to bring this over to Olivier, and why don't you explain a little bit about our choice with the Honda Civic and why we wanted to go with that one?
Yeah, for sure, Quentin. So, not only did we just like the new Honda Civic Type R, and we saw it when it came out on iRacing. I think Quentin and I both thought it was going to be a cool car to run. But I actually ended up testing in also the Hyundai Elantra, and after driving it at a few different tracks, I felt that the Hyundai wasn't quite for my driving style. I think the Civic is a little pointier at the front end, has a little more front bite, and just allows you to place the car a little more aggressively, which I do like for my driving style.
Thanks, Olivier. And we just saw you actually do a pretty aggressive overtake on one of those Elantras right here. Why don't you walk us through this one and the setup and the approach you took?
Yeah, so again, going through turn 1, you can see these guys are going side by side, making a little bit of contact. So I knew there was going to be a moment here for me to capitalize on these guys fighting. Saw a little bit of a gap there, took it on the inside, but now I know I'm going to be on the outside going to the S's. Not really the kind of place you want to be going side by side with another driver, but I tried to give him a little bit of room. I think we did make a tiny bit of contact. He went a bit off, but it happens, especially in these touring car classes. A little bit of rubbing is definitely going to happen.
Thanks for that, Olivier. And yeah, we see it didn't impact him too much. He's still right on your bumper at this point. And we're coming through turn 7 for the 5th time now. Onto the back straight, and you definitely have a decent draft on this other Elantra up in front of you. Although there is a gap to the next pack ahead, so you definitely want to get by this guy as quickly as possible in order to have as much time as possible to catch the guys ahead. And we see into 10A, you actually make that lunge down the inside. Of course, this doesn't always work out. He comes back for the inside of 10B, but you manage to actually stick it around the outside here. So why don't you talk us through this one?
Yeah, again, just a pretty simple, draft up and then just try to outbrake into the braking zone. Didn't want to lose too much time with this one, considering there was already, I think, at least 2 or 3 seconds to the guys in front. So I gave him some space, didn't want to make any contact, lose any momentum, and we ended up making it stick. So now just hunting down the group in front.
Great, thanks for that, Olivier. Yeah, and we're starting lap 6 now. You're already up to 4th position at this point after starting in 9th. Even with that little incident at the end of lap 1, seems that you're able to make up a lot of ground. Although, as you mentioned, quite a big gap in front of you at this point. So I'm wondering, what are your thoughts at this point in the race? What's going through your mind? Are you thinking, I just need to catch these guys as quick as possible? Or are you thinking, maybe I should just hope that they get in a fight and they come to me so I can save my tires and drive a bit more cautiously? Just talk us through what was running through your mind at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So starting with the inverted grid, considering I finished the first race in second, I knew I had the long run pace to fight in the front. The guys around me, I definitely feel like I had a little bit of an edge over, especially coming back through the pack. But at this point already, I'm a good three or so seconds back from the top three. And actually, another one of my teammates, Michael Cochran, was leading the race at this point. So I knew he was probably out of chance of reaching for the race, but at least trying to get onto that podium spot. So really just hitting my marks, definitely pushing, just trying to keep a little bit of tire life for the last few laps, just in case they do fight hard and I can actually catch back up. But really just aiming for that P3 car at this point, just trying to reel them in.
All right, thanks for that insight, Olivier. And I do want to mention, tires are usually a bigger deal in endurance racing. So in a 20-minute race, you typically not think about it too much. But then again, these TCR cars are a different animal than what most people have experience with in iRacing, which is usually Formula cars or GT3, GT4 cars. So they are really a different animal. So I was wondering if I could get your thoughts, Olivier, on the differences and if tire wear is more or less of a factor in these cars than some of the other popular categories in iRacing.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, just like really in anything, keeping your tires in the optimal window is going to be important, for the performance over the course of a race stint. But what I found with these TCRs is that because it's really so much about momentum and just also being the characteristics of the front wheel drive, they really like to eat up those front tires. So I found that trying to drive them more with the rear, kind of there you can see almost over rotating into the corners, using the rear end, using some trail brake, just to get the back end to do more of the rotation than the front. It actually helps keep the fronts intact for longer. And also another thing to notice is that as much as, in these, even though they're short 20-minute races, the tires feel like they're dropping away a lot, but it's actually more down to the temperatures than actual degradation. So what happens with these tires is that they just get really hot. The fronts get very, very hot. And then it's difficult for them to come back down to temperature unless you really go easy for a few laps. So yeah, I mean, definitely a different animal compared to the GT3s that I'm used to racing. I would say these tires do overall deg faster and they overheat faster than the GT3 tires usually would. But in the end, just try not to overdrive that front end and really rotating with the rear end definitely seems to help with these cars and these tires.
All right, thanks again for the insight on that one, Olivier. So we see you're just passing a lapped car there, another Elantra, which seemed to be the popular choice throughout this stacked 35 car field we had for this race. And at this point, you're nearing the end of lap 8 onto lap 9, so you're past the halfway mark for the race, up in 4th place, and you're chipping away at the Elantra up ahead in 3rd place, slowly closing that gap. But as you mentioned, these cars, these TCRs, they like to be driven with the rear and really rotated by letting the rear slide around a bit. And that's something that I think has been the biggest challenge for many of the drivers in this series to adapt to, comparatively with, as you mentioned, stuff like the GT3 cars, which are all going to be rear wheel drive. So that's an interesting point you made about the TCRs and how to drive them differently. And another thing I'd like to mention here, we're going through turn 5, and turn 6, turn 7 seems to be a very defining factor for a lot of people. I know myself included was really struggling with these two corners specifically. You can really gain and lose a lot of time here, and specifically in the TCRs. So Olivier, I'm wondering if we could get a little insight into those two specific corners you just ran through, 6 and 7 there, and if there's any sort of tricks or tips that you use to get through those quickly.
Yeah, so turn 6, it's a pretty heavy braking zone, but it's important not to overslow going into it. So again, using a lot of trail brake and that rear brake to get the car rotated in allows you to carry some more speed through the corner. And then really going to turn 7, it's all about the exit. You can compromise the entry, as much as you want without, being too much about it. But I actually do a little bit more of a shallower line going in because than a lot of the people I was noticing on track, because I found it that if you try to do that very late apex, late turn in, a lot of the time you end up just not quite getting it right and then missing the apex, and then the whole back straight you're feeling the loss from that mistake. So I actually like doing a kind of easy trail break into it, turning in a little earlier and just letting the car rotate, being patient, and then once I get it pointed for the exit, I'm just back on the throttle, powering out.
All right, thanks again for the insight on that one, Olivier. And we see we're on to lap 10 now, going through those corners you were just talking about. There's 6, here comes turn 7 now. And you're right on the bumper of, as I mentioned, yet another Elantra, which did seem to be a very popular choice. And onto the back straight, definitely getting a solid tow at this point from the car up ahead. And I think you're gonna, have to make a pass here if you want any hope of getting to the top two in this race, because they're a few more seconds up ahead. And look at that, you actually got it done before 10A even came around. So can you talk us through that pass a little bit and sort of the differences between typical passes in this area of the track?
Yeah, so usually, if you have a nice draft coming on someone in front of you, you'll die for the inside there. But the driver I was battling there, he actually defended for the inside, which is a good move on his part. But I did have a lot more momentum, so I was able to actually clear him right before the braking zone. He didn't fight it too hard. I think he knew that I was going to be coming through, and he just tried to tuck in behind and kind of stay in my draft.
All right, thanks again, Olivier. And you made a good point there about him sort of knowing that maybe you had a bit more pace, so he defended, but he wasn't gonna battle you too hard for that position, knowing you probably had that additional pace. So I was also gonna ask you, in fact, what you thought overall with this series, with this league that we're running in, as in terms of the drivers and being respectful of each other and that sort of thing, what your thoughts are.
Yeah, for sure. So I've already done one season of the MSCC iRacing League. I got invited by a buddy from an endurance team that I run with, and he told me to join the league, and I was definitely interested to run with the same group of guys every week. And so the last season we did was in the GT3 cars, and we had a consistent 20 to 30 car turnout, which was really nice. And just a good group of guys, really nice dudes, and some great racing, great competition throughout the field. And I think what's really nice about this league is that no matter where you are, no matter your experience or your pace level, you'll find someone to race with, whether it's in the front, in the middle, towards the back. There's guys of all driving levels, and especially now introducing the TCR car. It's maybe a little less intimidating for more people to join, as you saw that there's 35 cars in this race, and hopefully the registration numbers stay high throughout the whole season. And yeah, this class is great, for the close racing. It's more friendly to race tightly with, and yeah, just a really solid group of drivers all throughout the field.
Yep, thanks for those comments again, Olivier. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. The league we run with is it's the Martin Sports Car Club, or MSCC. It's the acronym they're using. Definitely, I'm very new to it still, but a great bunch of people, and they all seem to be, you know, very respectful on track as well, and not getting too mad about accidents where, maybe some driver was left out or stranded, but it was just because of some close racing and nothing intentional. And I saw that definitely a lot in the mid pack. Although you were driving obviously a lot closer towards the front of the pack here. You're coming through the end of lap 12 now, of 14 in third position. So it's been a great run for you. You're building a small gap to the guy in fourth now behind you in that Elantra, and definitely seems like you were gaining a little bit on the top two, but at this point, it does seem that they started working together and sort of drafting through the lap to gain a little extra pace. And do you think that that's maybe one of the key factors with these TCR cars at almost any track is finding somebody to draft with, and that can really help you pull away from the rest of the field?
Absolutely. I mean, these cars, they definitely they don't draft maybe as well as some of the higher downforce cars, or just bigger cars. But once you're within that 6 to 7 tenths behind a car, you'll get a really nice draft. And already in a car that's not too quick down the straights, a few kilometers an hour extra definitely add up to a decent amount of time. So you can see the second some guys start drafting instead of fighting each other, they'll definitely pick up some speed on the people around them.
All right, yeah. Thanks again, Olivier. Definitely have to agree with you. Further down the field, I had a few laps in tow and definitely had a lot of people getting a draft on me as well. So, uh, for me, it was kind of surprising. You wouldn't think that the draft would be that big of an advantage in cars that are so evenly matched and not really too powerful, and you wouldn't think have much downforce, but it certainly could improve your lap by, even 3 or 4 tenths around Road Atlanta here. So uh, it was a surprise for me. And we're actually on lap 14 now, so final lap of the race, coming down the S's for the last time through turn 5, over those big hunky curbs, and down the short chute here to turn 6 now. And it's been what I would call a very consistent race for you, Olivier, and you really made up a lot of spots and a lot of time, as I think one of the top two just ran a bit wide there, coming out of turn 7. Although I don't think you're going to have a chance to strike back because there's still quite a big gap. That might actually be a lapped car, anyways. I'm not quite sure. There's quite a lot of cars in front of you, so I'm not sure who's in the lead pack and which ones are the lapped cars. And we're really coming towards the end here, 10A, 10B. So I really want to cap off this video. We don't have much more time, but Olivier, do you have any final comments on this race overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good. It was definitely a good start to the season. Showed some nice race pace, and I enjoyed, the battles throughout the field. So I'm looking forward to next week's race at Daytona.